It's Valentine's weekend. We want to save your heart. We want you to have a healthy heart. And I have the guest on the program today who can make it happen for you. Caldwell Esselstyn, M.D., received his B.A. from Yale University and his M.D. from Western Reserve University. In 1956, he received a gold medal as a member of the United States Olympic rowing team. And he trained as a surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic and at St. George's Hospital in London. In 1968, as an Army surgeon in Vietnam, he was awarded the Bronze Star. Dr. Esselstyn has been associated with the Cleveland Clinic since 1968, having served as staff president and on its board of governors. He chaired the clinic's breast cancer task force. In 1991, Dr. Esselstyn served as president of the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons. The same year, he organized the first conference on the elimination of coronary artery disease. In 2005, Dr. Esselstyn became the first recipient of the Benjamin Spock Award for Compassion in Medicine. And his book is Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. His website is heartattackproof.com. And welcome, Dr. Esselstyn, to Go Vegan with Bob Linden.
Thank you, Bob. It's wonderful to be with you.
It's terrific to have you here. To you, heart disease, which is, in fact, it is the number one killer in this country of men and women, more than 500,000 deaths annually in the United States. 3 times that number suffer a known heart attack, and 3 million more have silent heart attacks on top of that. And you think it's all unnecessary. There doesn't have to be any heart disease, and those who have it can reverse it or get it under control.
Absolutely. I feel that if the truth were known, heart disease is an absolutely toothless paper tiger that need never, ever exist. And should it exist, it need never, ever progress. And I think that that's the phrase that I like to use based upon a look at the epidemiology, that is the global incidence of this disease, and also as a result of our research. I think it's important for your listeners to understand that when you look globally, there are still cultures on this planet where heart disease is virtually unknown. If you look at the rural Chinese, the Papua Highlanders in New Guinea, Central Africa, and the Tarahumara Indians in northern Mexico, if you're a heart surgeon and you go to these territories expecting to earn a living, forget it. You better plan on selling pencils. Because there isn't any heart disease there, and it's largely and entirely because they, by culture, heritage, and tradition, they consume a type of plant-based nutrition that does not contain any of what we call the atherosclerotic linchpins, that is to say, none of those foods that are implicated in the causation of this disease, which are processed oils, dairy, and meat, whether it's a piece of lamb chop or pork, steak, dairy products, or oils. It's very interesting that when you look at, by way of contrast, this country, by age 12, our children begin to have thickening of those major carotid arteries which go to our brain. And if they live until they're age 20 and they happen to die in combat, as was known in Korea and in Vietnam 40 and 50 years ago, when you look at their arteries, you can find, even without a microscope, that roughly 80% of these young GIs already have gross evidence of coronary artery disease. And you might feel that that was due to the military experience being the stress. However, if we now look at something more recent, not 40 or 50 years ago, but in 1999, in a study that was done of those who happened to die of accidents, homicides, and suicides between the ages of 16 and 34, when you carefully look at their arteries to their heart, the disease has now become ubiquitous. It's there in everybody. And so obviously we're not doing something that is right. We're doing something that is very wrong. And that was sort of the background of my understanding of why it was that I wanted to do research in this area.
Yeah, so, I'll let people know again, we're talking to Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, and his book is Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, the Revolutionary Scientifically Proven Nutrition-Based Cure. So, scientifically proven, 20-year study that was published in the American Journal of Cardiology. Tell us about the science behind it. People are always asking me about studies. What proof do you have?
Well, we'll get to the study in a moment, but first I think it's important for your listeners to understand where our sort of defense mechanism against this disease breaks down is in the lining cells that are one layer thick that protect the inside of our arteries. These cells that are one layer thick, when you're a teenager and you spread them out one layer thick, you could probably cover 6 or 8 tennis courts. But the problem is that as we are growing older, we're doing something by eating the Western diet where we literally destroy these wonderful life jacket cells. These, if you want the official name, it's endothelial cells. We're destroying these every day with the typical Western diet. There is a sensitive test now that can evaluate whether these wonderful lining cells can make a sufficient amount of their magical compound, which happens to be a gas, nitric oxide. When you've got healthy lining cells of your arteries, they're making this product in abundance, enough to protect us from developing any heart disease. However, when you do sophisticated studies after food ingestion, you find that there is immediate injury to these delicate endothelial cells after something as benign sounding as olive oil or palm oil or soybean oil. Immediate injury to these cells. After you have cheese, ice cream, butter, dairy products, and lamb chops, steak, pork, these kinds of foods immediately injure these delicate lining endothelial cells. And therefore, we end up, and if you really look carefully at people in their 60s and 70s, careful studies from the University of Pittsburgh reveal the following, that literally everybody who has been eating a typical Western type of diet, all men by 65 and all women by 70 who have been exposed to this diet have cardiovascular disease and should be treated as such.
All men and all women, you're saying?
That's correct. That's right. This is the work of Dr. Lewis Culler from the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health.
Amazing.
Now, on the other hand, why wouldn't it make sense, therefore, to take a group of patients who were seriously ill with heart disease and see if we can't get them to completely subscribe to eating the type of plant-based nutrition which we see in those cultures where the disease is non-existent. And that was the whole basis behind my research, which started back in 1985. And we had about 24 patients that literally were the walking dead. They had failed their first or second bypass operation. They had failed their first or second stenting or angioplasty attempt. They were too sick for these procedures or they had refused. And there were 5 in that original group where expert cardiologists said that they would not live out the year. But I'm happy to say that that group lived beyond 22 years. And the exciting thing was that they not only arrested the progression of their disease, but we did special x-rays of the diameter of their arteries to their heart and found out that not only did they arrest the disease, but we often found that they had striking reversal of their disease.
And these are patients with extreme heart conditions. I mean,
correct.
Yeah.
So what really happened was that when you eat this way and you make significant, profound changes, you are able to restore the capacity of those delicate single-layer lining cells to once again make that magical compound I mentioned earlier called nitric oxide. The other thing that was so important for these patients who, as they went through this 20-year period, there is nothing that perhaps that a patient who's had a heart attack or has heart disease, or their family for that matter, fears more than when will the other shoe fall. That is to say, when will they have another heart attack?
Dr. Esselstyn, we have to take a brief break here now, so
yeah.
We'll hold that thought.